So the Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis crossover event with Final Fantasy XIII is officially here, and to my surprise, there is a story event to go along with it. So we're going to be recapping that story in today's video and looking forward into the future to see what's next for Ever Crisis. So if any of that sounds cool to you, feel free to click the like button, and if you're new here and you'd like to stick around, you can subscribe. It is greatly appreciated. Okay, so I initially thought that last Ever Crisis recap I uploaded was potentially going to be my last Ever Crisis recap, period. But it turns out,
with a lot of detective tests determined that was a lie.
Because I didn't know that this crossover event with Lightning would actually have a story. But it does, and it's pretty fun. Now, full transparency, back when Final Fantasy XIII came out, I didn't finish it. I didn't even really get that far into it. This was a point in my life where I just wasn't really into Final Fantasy, and I decided to take a step back and move on. But if there's one thing this event has done, it's made me want to play through Final Fantasy XIII now. Hearing some of the story stuff, hearing the incredible music, I gotta check it out. But with that being said, there may be some nods and Easter eggs to the story of Final Fantasy XIII in this event, whether they be visual or in terms of dialogue, that I just don't pick up on because I haven't played the game. So if you're a Final Fantasy XIII fan and you happen to notice that stuff, feel free to let me know in the comments down below, so you can add some more context to the story. So our story opens up with a vision of Lightning getting ready to fight Cloud, Aerith, and Tifa. We don't know why, but things are not looking good. We then cut to Cloud, Aerith, and Tifa waking up in what looks like modern-day Nibelheim. However, they don't know where they are and they don't know how they got there, when suddenly they feel a presence. Someone approaches, and it's Lightning. They ask who she is, but Aerith immediately recognizes her and goes, "Hang on, I think I've seen you in my dream. We've definitely met before. And this place that we're in feels awfully familiar." Aerith then introduces herself in the party to Lightning and asks for her name. Light proceeds to give her the name Lightning. Aerith then asks, "Are you also lost? Did you wander here?" Lightning recalls that she was going about her business and then suddenly she ended up here. Cloud remarks that they are also in the same situation, and he proceeds to ask Lightning, "Do you know a way we can get out of here?" Lightning says yes, she knows a way that she can get back home, and that's by taking them all down. She says, "There's no other way. This is the fate that's been chosen for us." And we proceed to fight Lightning. Cue the incredible Final Fantasy XIII battle music that whenever I played Dissidia, I always made sure it was in my playlist. It's great. I have a feeling this entire soundtrack is probably going to become a big favorite of mine. Again, I gotta play through 13. So after the battle, Aerith goes up to Lightning and offers to heal her. However, Lightning's guard is still up, and she wants to fight again, but she collapses from exhaustion. She wakes up in the Shinra Manor, and she's surprised that the group helped her. Tifa then informs her that she's still wounded and that she's been out for an entire week. Lightning, however, is still not trusting, and she thinks that the group is trying to trick her, get her to let her guard down. Tifa then asks her, "Why are you fighting us?" Lightning then says that she thinks that by fighting and defeating this group, that's how she finds her way back home. She then proceeds to chastise the group for helping her in the first place by saying, "You don't think I won't attack you again?" To which Cloud, being Cloud, steps up to her and says, "I'll put a stop to that quick." Aerith then begins to explain their journey from Midgar and how they suddenly ended up in this place. Tifa then mentions that this place looks a lot like her and Cloud's hometown of Nibelheim, but it feels completely different. Now, when it comes to these crossovers, the way they work is that they take place during the main story of FF7. The group has left Midgar, they're trying to find their way to Sephiroth, and along the way, sometimes they go into portals, sometimes they get separated, sometimes they just pass out, and they end up in these different worlds. Their minds are wiped before and after the event, so they have no recollection of anything. So that's just kind of explaining how these events take place. Aerith puts forth the idea that maybe if they work together, they can all find a way to get out of here. However, Lightning reminds them that she's unsure of how they can get back because she's only certain that she knows how to find a way to get herself back by fighting them. Tifa then asks her, "How did you find out how to get back home?" But Lightning won't answer. Tifa then says, "Well, if you ever feel like sharing, please let us know." They then leave her to let her rest. They come back later to check on her, and she's gone. She's completely booked it. But turns out she didn't go far. She's at the entrance to the Shinra Manor. Lightning then begins to explain to the group that when she was pulled into this world, she had a vision of herself fighting the group. She figures that the Fal'Cie are the ones responsible for putting her there. Now, Fal'Cie, I do remember, they are essentially the big bads of Final Fantasy XIII, right? She then proceeds to say, "They are the masters of my world. The people are just their tools. Their orders are absolute and have to be obeyed." Which I think is kind of like the plot of Final Fantasy XIII. Lightning was trying to save her sister. She wasn't successful. Punishment by the Fal'Cie. Very, very simple layman's terms. Cloud then says, "You took on an enemy that you had no chance against. I think we can relate to that." So once again, Lightning feels that her punishment from the Fal'Cie is being sent to this world. Tifa then questions, well, what would happen if we pretended to be defeated by you? But before they can explore that idea, Lightning collapses and has this pink-purple energy start emitting from her chest. She warns the party to stay back, and then she takes off. Aerith knows that Lightning is in pain, and she wants to go after her because they know they need to help her. The group find her outside of the mansion, and she proceeds to apologize to them. Lightning once again feels that this is punishment by the Fal'Cie because she's starting to resist their orders. Now again, I don't know the context of this pinkish purple energy, but I've seen some screenshots of Lightning, some wallpapers that look super cool where that exact thing is happening. So if you guys could clarify in the comments, I'd appreciate it. And in this moment, Lightning realizes she has no choice. She has to fight. Cloud then questions, do you even know for sure if they will send you back if you win? And he can tell that she isn't sure. Aerith then recalls seeing that vision that Lightning had. Lightning, however, thinks that she's lying. Aerith then begins to explain that she could feel that flashback. She wasn't trying to hurt Lightning, she just wanted to understand her. She wanted to know the real Lightning so they could be friends. Aerith then questions if they can find a way to take those feelings and use them to get themselves back home. Lightning, however, still will not listen, but Aerith is convinced that if they can put all of their thoughts and feelings out in battle, they can find a connection and find a way back home. So it's kind of some Dissidia shenanigans where they're fighting, they put out some energy, maybe they find a solution to their problem. Lightning, however, still has massive doubts. What if Aerith is wrong? That's not a burden that Lightning can or wants to carry. But Cloud reminds her, you don't have to carry it alone because we're here now. Lightning then goes on to say that she has failed so many times. She's betrayed her friends, she couldn't save her sister, and now she's trapped in this mysterious world. She was even manipulated into attacking Cloud and the party. And she says to them, can you even trust me? Aerith says yes. And then Lightning warns her, what if I betray you again? Cloud, of course, being Cloud, says, then we'll stop you again. So they decide to fight, to give it everything that they've got. Lightning then tells them, call me Light. We then have a battle with Lightning ensue in nighttime Nibelheim, which looks really pretty. Lightning hits pretty hard, man. I'm glad I survived this battle, but man, does she do a lot of damage. So anyway, we win the fight. Afterwards, Cloud, Aerith, Tifa, Lightning, they're all exhausted. Cloud says that was a tough fight. It looks like we're fighting the real Lightning now. Lightning says this is not over. She's gonna be the one to control her own fate and that she will keep fighting. As she says this, a portal opens up, and it looks like her thoughts were able to break through. She then proceeds to thank the party, which gets a really funny line out of Cloud, where Cloud says, never thought I'd hear a thank you from you. Maybe you're not as mean as I thought. To which Aerith and Tifa chastise him by yelling out the name Cloud, which I really like, because Cloud and Lightning kind of remind me of one another. They're very stoic kind of characters, kind of lacking some self-awareness. Cloud more than Lightning, so I thought that was kind of funny. Lightning realizes that when she was transported to this world, she lost sight of everything. And in doing so, all of that crippling self-doubt came to the surface. She was constantly reminded of her failures, the betrayal of her friends, the fact that she couldn't save her sister. She lost faith in herself, but the party believed in her. She then remarks that the group are good people, and she hopes that maybe they can go another round one day, to which the group declines politely, saying that they think they'll pass. Lightning then walks through the portal, and our story event is over. So, Nothing too crazy, but it's nice that they put together these little small events and actually put some effort into the story and the writing and getting the characters to know one another and even have motivations for why the characters are there and how they need to leave. But again, this has really made me want to check out Final Fantasy XIII. Again, based on stuff I've seen over the years online and in my own comments, there's been this resurgence, seemingly, of a lot of love for Final Fantasy XIII and people looking at it a little differently these days. So it's something I would like to check out. If you guys know the best way to play Final Fantasy XIII, please let me know. I know it runs really well on the Series X, however, I don't have a Series X, so I might have to resort to the PC. But I thought that was pretty fun. Now, looking towards the future of Ever Crisis, the next big crossover they have planned is for December, and that's with the Nier series, which I've heard some good things about in my comments. Some people saying, hey, Corduroy, I think you might like this game, you should check it out. So maybe when this barrage of games is done, I'm still playing through Ghost of Yotei, I gotta get to Final Fantasy Tactics, so maybe sometime next year I can maybe sit down and explore the Nier games and see what they're all about. But after that, we have no idea what's in store for Ever Crisis. We have no idea if they have an episode 3 of the First Soldier planned, because they said episode 2 was going to be the finale of young Sephiroth, which is a little odd because I felt like there was still some more story they could have told. Things like explaining why Sephiroth would come to revere someone like Professor Gast and truly loathe Hojo. We see tiny bits of the Hojo stuff in episode 1 and 2 of The First Soldier, just seeing how Hojo has manipulated Sephiroth and put him in these really dangerous combat situations to train him and test him, so we kind of see bits of that. But I think it'd be cool if they did an episode 3 of The First Soldier that takes place after Sephiroth gets the Masamune and he's a little bit older, but before Crisis Core. Really dive into the relationship of Sephiroth and Angeal and the introduction to Genesis, all leading up to when Sephiroth eventually becomes that war hero. And we have seen bits of that story within things like 3X Soldiers and the First Soldier episodes where Sephiroth does become that war hero, but you can flesh out that time period a lot more, in my opinion. But also exploring the relationship between Sephiroth and Genesis, because they are legitimate friends, and Sephiroth does view him as a close friend. But Genesis doesn't just view Sephiroth as a friend, he also views him as this goal to surpass. I think he says in Crisis Core, the world needs a new hero, so Genesis also has a bit of a chip on his shoulder, and I think there's room for story stuff to kind of plant seeds to see that eventually play out in Crisis Core. But I just can't help but wonder what is going to happen with Ever Crisis. Ever Crisis was technically conceived not only as a way to give fans a smaller scale, close to the original FF7 type of remake, but I think the whole goal of Ever Crisis was to act as a bridge for the remake trilogy, getting players from remake to rebirth and from rebirth to part 3. And with part 3 kind of being on the horizon, it makes me wonder, has Ever Crisis kind of reached its goal? Is there any more that they can do now, and will they eventually shut it down? They were planning initially to do a campaign for Advent Children, however that turned into a crossover event where we got clips from the movie and outfits and weapons from Advent Children in some battles against Bahamut Sin and Sephiroth, but we didn't get the full campaign. And we don't know if they're going to still do Before Crisis or Dirge of Cerberus. So I'm not trying to freak anybody out. Again, I have no insider information. I'm just kind of looking at the situation as it is now because I don't know what's going to happen in the future for Ever Crisis. But if there are cool story things happening, I'll be recapping them here on the channel. It's fun, and it's a cool way to kind of bring these stories to more people that maybe don't want to play through them themselves through Ever Crisis. So, with that being said, that is the video. I am Curious Corduroy. Let me know in the comments down below, what did you guys think of this crossover with Lightning into Final Fantasy XIII? And should the First Soldier story continue within episode 3, what would you personally like to see them tackle in terms of the story? I will see you guys in the next video. Please remember to always be excellent to one another.